Welcome back and thank you very much for staying with us. This is Beyond Wild as One. We are glad you're watching. I'm Eric Njoka. This is what happened today. The Kremlin has confirmed that talks between Russia's President Vladimir Putin and his American counterpart have concluded. The two leaders spoke for close to 2.5 hours. The US says Hamas bears full blame for Israel's massive deadly airstrikes, saying the militants could have accepted a ceasefire extension proposal by US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Israel threatens to intensify Gaza strikes unless Hamas resumes genuine negotiations, says attacks are fully coordinated with the US. This has over 400 killed in one of the deadliest attacks on the Palestinian territory post the ceasefire. Israeli media has reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial has been postponed after Israel launched strikes in Gaza overnight. Prosecution agreed to cancel Bibi's testimony over security developments. US President Donald Trump sharply escalates his conflict with the judiciary with a call for the impeachment of a federal judge who ordered the suspension of high-profile deportation flights of alleged illegal migrants. Supreme Court of India expresses concerns about the alleged nexus between banks and builders, assures CBI probe into the grievances of homeowners. Narrow escape for Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud as Al-Shabaab militants target his convoy in a bomb attack. This while the president was travelling through the capital Mogadishu.
Good evening. We begin tonight with exclusive details about major health concerns in Adelaide South, where a potentially toxic cloud of dust is hanging over an entire suburb.
A 9 News and a Current Affair investigation has uncovered serious questions for the people of Selleck Beach, who are tonight gathering for a crisis meeting. Beth Excel is there. Beth, you've spoken to some of those impacted.
Yes, Brenton, and some of them at their wits' end. They say their slice of paradise here at Selleck Beach is increasingly becoming a daily nightmare. This suburb is directly across the road from a giant quarry, which residents say is the cause of constant dust raining down on their homes. And you can see in these pictures, it covers everything. There's solar panels, roofs. They're having to clean daily and constantly. Now, that in itself is a major headache, but the real concern for these residents is their health. They've commissioned their own test and say the results from the dust they analysed revealed toxic and potentially deadly silica.
What's my future going to look like? It's affecting my health now. What's this mean for the future? Why aren't these government agencies doing something about it?
We're looking for help. What this is, it's not wanting for people to lose their jobs or for things to close down or being vindictive. All we want is some help. And to date, we've had no help from government whatsoever.
Now, this is also where the state government has earmarked land for 1,700 new homes to deal with the housing crisis. The housing minister says there's still ongoing testing as part of the rezoning process, and he'll wait to see evidence from that. Adbri, which owns and operates the quarry, says the local rock has low silica content and poses minimal risk, and that it has extensive dust mitigation protocols. Now, I'll have an extensive report on this issue in A Current Affair straight after the news.
Emlékeztetem, kérem képviselőtársamat, őrizzék meg nyugalmukat. A Törvényalkotási Bizottság összegző módosító javaslatát. Kérdezem a tisztelt Országgyűlést, elfogadja-e a Törvényalkotási Bizottság? Tartózkodás nélkül elfogadta. Ők saját magukat zárták ki azzal, hogy most távoztak. Természetesen a rájuk vonatkozó szankciók azok érvényesek.
In the heart of Africa, a catastrophic environmental disaster unfolds. Toxic waste from a Chinese-owned copper mine decimates one of Zambia's most important waterways. Our next story tells you how China has killed a river in Zambia. Take a look.
In Zambia, the Kafue River, once teeming with life and sustaining countless communities, now carries a deadly cocktail of acid and heavy metals through the country's agricultural heartland, threatening to become one of the continent's worst ecological calamities in recent memory. On 18th of February 2025, a Chinese-owned copper mine in northern Zambia unleashed an environmental disaster. A tailings dam collapsed, spilling 50 million litres of acidic waste, heavy metals and toxic sludge into the crucial waterway. The deadly mix surged downstream, contaminating the Kafue River, Zambia's lifeline. The spill has already killed fish, poisoned crops and spread fear among millions who depend on the river.
This morning until here, we did not catch any fish. Why? The you people Chinese put it to their gases.
It was so fast, according to the guy's explanation, who saw it. It was so fast, it was getting bigger and bigger by the minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. By 30 minutes, it was a whole collapse.
Farmers stared in despair at their ruined maize and groundnut fields. Entire communities were left wondering how they would survive. The toxic sludge didn't just pollute the water, it also shattered lives.
When I went to the fish pond, I found that the lime had flowed through the pond and all the fish had been swept away. I just stood in agony, wondering what I would do about the money I spent on the project. I stood there watching because there was nothing I could do.
It is an environmental disaster, really of catastrophic consequence when we consider the fact that cyanometals has polluted a river on which millions of people depend for their livelihoods. We're also talking about wildlife and just the general disturbance which has been given even in not just villages but actual towns.
This is not the first time Chinese-owned mines have been accused of environmental destruction in Africa. Across the continent, communities suffer while foreign companies extract wealth, leaving behind a trail of pollution, deforestation and disease. The Zambian disaster is another brutal chapter in this ongoing exploitation. Bureau Report, World is One.
In a part of Sudan recently recaptured by the army, Red Crescent volunteers are pulling bodies out of a well. Until a few weeks ago, this area, Shag el Nil, was under the control of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Hisham Zain Al-Abdin, Director of Forensic Medicine for Khartoum State, says most of the 15 victims had been shot in the head.
We found this mass grave inside this well. The injuries were caused by gunshots, head injuries. The entry and exit points of the bullets are there. The cause of death in some cases is bone fractures because of the fall. So they were throwing people into the well.
Nearly 2 years into Sudan's civil war, and government forces have been advancing into territory long held by the RSF. Authorities say they are finding widespread evidence of killings in areas formerly under RSF control. Zain Al-Abdin said other bodies have been found scattered on roadsides or hidden in basements, with some of the victims tied up. The RSF did not respond to a request for comment. It has in the past denied accusations of widespread abuses and said individual perpetrators would be held to account. It has also accused the army of carrying out its own abuses, which the army denies. Hussein Al-Faki is one of the residents who reported the bodies in the well to the authorities. He said locals had tried to bury the victims while the area was under RSF control, but that armed men had warned us not to go near them. He says if you got closer, they would shoot you. So we ran away and left them.
This afternoon, there are even more questions surrounding the disappearance of this young lady here. A University of Pittsburgh student was in the Dominican Republic. Sadiksha Kanaki was last seen March 6th after going to the beach with some friends, and now police have confiscated the passport of the Iowa man who may have been the last person to see her. Her family is now asking police to declare her deceased. Dominican Republic National Police say the family has written a letter requesting her death be made official.
An explosion has ripped through the Trans-Niger pipeline. The blast, which occurred last night, struck a section of the pipeline near the Bodo-Boni Road, currently under construction in the Bodo community of Gokana local government area of Rivers State. Thick black smoke billowed into the atmosphere as fire quickly spread into the surrounding mangrove, and the exact cause of the explosion remains unknown at this time. The Trans-Niger Pipeline, TNP, is a major oil pipeline that transports crude oil from oil fields in Rivers and Bayelsa states to the Boni crude oil export terminal. The terminal is a key point for exporting Nigerian crude oil to international markets.
Just give me the flag, but I'm using my earpiece.
Shifting our focus to Honduras, where a small passenger plane crashed seconds after taking off from a Caribbean island near mainland Honduras, killing at least 12 people and leaving several injured. Our next report telling you more.
In yet another day and yet another deadly plane crash in Honduras. 12 people lost their lives after a small plane skidded into the sea shortly after departing from the Honduran island. It crashed approximately 1 kilometer off the island's coast. This is no ordinary crash. And the rescue operations are as challenging as it gets, which makes access extremely difficult. Efforts are underway to rescue those who survived the crash. Officers and rescue workers were seen toiling relentlessly, transporting victims from the water to an ambulance and bringing them ashore for speedy medical treatment. Honduran musician and politician Aurelio Martinez was also among those pronounced dead. Honduras, however, isn't new to crashes. Just weeks ago, a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter crashed in Honduras while trying to make an emergency landing. This came on the heels of another helicopter of the same model crashing into a plane over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. and killing 67 people in the month of January. It is no news that fatal aviation incidents have been making headlines in 2025. In Honduras, the police says that mechanical failure is a reason behind the plane crash.
Ahora, después de tener aproximadamente más de 100 muertos en mi distrito, producto de la extorsión y el sicariato, y que no ha habido ningún comunicado del gobierno, fallece lamentablemente un cantante de cumbia muy querido de mi país, y al día siguiente declaran en emergencia. Estas reacciones no tienen planificación, no tienen estrategia, son reacciones para el titular.
Queridas niñas, niños, a estos malditos asesinos les digo que estoy pensando seriamente en la pena de muerte.
Israel has launched a massive assault on Gaza, effectively ending its ceasefire with Hamas. The health ministry says more than 400 Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes across the Strip. They include Hamas officials and many children. Israel says the attacks will continue to force Hamas to release its last hostages. In an interview with Channel 4 News, the UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, condemned the action in the strongest possible terms.
All right, moving on, Taiwan's defense ministry claims to have detected 59 Chinese aircraft around the island on Monday, the highest tally since a record number in October last year. Along with 59 aircraft, Taiwan's defense ministry says it detected 9 Chinese warships and 2 balloons. The development comes just days after Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te called China a foreign hostile force. In recent years, Beijing has ramped up the deployment of fighter jets and naval vessels around the island. It is to press its claim of sovereignty. China insists Taiwan is part of its territory. It has threatened to use force to bring the democratic island under its control. On the other hand, Taiwan accuses China of using espionage, cyber attacks, and disinformation to weaken its defenses. In October last year, China launched large-scale military drills. Taiwan shared it detected a record 153 Chinese aircraft around Taiwan. Now, some of these aircraft have reportedly taken part in joint combat patrols. Now, justifying its action, China said its action were a response to external forces' willful connivance. Now, the support for Taiwan's independence was also mentioned, warning the Taiwan Independence Separatist Forces. Now, on March 14, the commander of the People's Liberation Army, PLA, warned Taiwan, saying Chinese military remains on high alert and is ready to fight at any time to thwart any attempt at Taiwan independence. Additionally, the Chinese government criticized U.S. decision to remove a reference to the status of Taiwan from the State Department website. The United States does not diplomatically recognize Taiwan, but remains its main security backer. In February, it removed a line from a State Department fact sheet that stated, "We do not support Taiwan independence." Last week, Taiwanese president branded China hostile and proposed measures to combat deepening Chinese infiltration in the island.
يا رب يا رب يا رب سلم يا رب يا رب يا رب يا رب سلم يا رب يا رب يا رب يا رب سلم يا رب.
Speaking of all things Canada, Mississauga Mayor Carolyn Parrish says the city has started taking down American flags. She said on X, quote, "At the request of many, the city has begun removing all American flags from sports arenas and locations along Lake Ontario, including the pier at Snug Harbor and Port Credit. Oversized Canadian flags are being ordered and will be installed on all poles at City Hall." Here's what some Mississauga residents have said.
It's good that we have more Canadian flags. It's part of the identity, and in these times, it's important to have to be together and be strong, and of course have identity. Right?
I'm all for it. I love Canada, and I want to do everything I can to support our beautiful country.
I've never been prouder to be Canadian, so I'm all for it. Fly the Canadian flags.
Mississauga, not the first to do this. Earlier this month, Barrie's mayor ordered the removal of all American flags from city-owned facilities like hockey arenas in response to the tariffs.
USS Gravely, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, is now deployed to the southern border, part of the Pentagon's efforts to tamp down on illegal immigration and drug trafficking. The Department of Defense says the warship, which was most recently deployed to the Middle East, is now serving a new mission to protect the U.S.'s territorial integrity, sovereignty, and security. A U.S. Coast Guard law enforcement attachment is also on board to help make sure the operation runs smoothly. The attachment is a specialized Coast Guard policing team. President Donald Trump ramped up efforts to secure the U.S.-Mexico border since returning to the White House. signing a flurry of executive orders to bulk up security and designating international drug cartels and other transnational criminal enterprises as foreign terrorist organizations. The Trump administration also deployed thousands of troops to the region. As we reported, U.S. spy agencies also sent reconnaissance planes to spot drug labs within Mexico. The deployment of the 509-foot-long guided missile destroyer takes it a step further, though, with the DoD describing it as a significant move to allow the Navy to serve a direct role in taking out threats before they reach American shores. The Gravely is larger and much more well-armed than the Coast Guard's patrol cutters. The Gravely's guided missile armaments include Tomahawk cruise missiles and several types of anti-air and anti-surface weapons. The destroyer returned to the U.S. after a 9-month mission defending against Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, where its crew also got plenty of experience. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Border Czar Tom Homan vowed to use the military in combating illegal immigration and cartel criminal actions. Homan says the administration will use any assets necessary at the Department of Defense to support the expulsion of those in the country illegally.
خرج الشعب اليمني اليوم ليبعث رسالة متكاملة للجيش الأمريكي لترامب للغطرسة الأمريكية والإسرائيلية أن الشعب اليمني صامد أن الضربات الأمريكية لن تؤثر فيه أننا ندعم كل الخطوات التصعيدية التي يمكن أن يتخذها السيد القائد عبد الملك بدر الدين الحوثي أن انتصار لليمن الجيش اليمني يقوم بواجبه وكذلك الشعب اليمني هذا الشعب اليمني الذي يواجه أمريكا في هذه الساحات لا يمكنها أن تهزمه وأن النصر سيكون حليفا.
kondisi terkini ya. Jebolnya tanggul di Dusun Mintreng, Desa Baturagung, tanggal 9 Maret tahun 2025. Ini banjir yang keempat, jebol yang keempat di tahun 2025. Ya, melaporkan izin, melaporkan bahwa kondisi